Good evening, everybody. We have the privilege today to have with us a father to many of us, Father Julian Carron. He is the president of the Fraternity of Communion and Liberation, and a father precisely because he is the one that we follow in this discovery of who we are. Tonight we have the opportunity of conversing with him. We asked him to actually answer a few questions that I have. I don't know how to answer some of the questions that I get, Father Carron, so I'll just ask them to you. And that way we are all set. But with these questions that come out of many conversations among us, out of questions that some people have sent me through the email these days, and through my personal experience too. I would like to begin reading an email in form of a question that, in my opinion, reflects very much where we are. If there is one thing that in working with young people, and when I say young people, between 25 and 40, so like people that are beginning their families, and is that they are much more sincere than what we are when we get older. This friend of ours says, "I am terrified of life, and I honestly do not see anything that seems enough, even CL and the experiences that people talk about. I just don't buy it. And yet, I do see certain people who really seem to have something worth living for. I want to be outrageously happy. I want to live for something great. And yet, I don't believe it is possible for me. I have had questions and struggles and terrible aches for years and have not met anything that overcomes them. I'm sick of people talking about a journey. I do not want glimmers or vague sensations, but something huge that revives my whole pitiful life. Yes, I'm cynical and weary, but I'm grasping for some sort of an answer, and you are one of the very few people who actually seem to have a life worth living. I just don't see how someone like me could even live like that." And I read this because I see in many of us, I see it many times in myself, that we do have this desire. We have a desire to be outrageously happy, but we are stuck in quicksand. Somehow, we have the desire, but every time we move, it looks like we are sinking. And therefore, ultimately, when we get older, we settle. We settle. We are told that life is a journey, but we don't know how to walk, how to get out of this quicksand. So, Father Julian, how do we get out of this quicksand?
Good evening, everybody. I am very happy to share with you this moment of dialogue about the most important thing in life, because every one of us desire a great life, to live for something really great, and to be outrageously happy. But, we usually add but. We don't believe that there could be a journey or a path to reach this goal, this target. And this is the mother question of life. A modern author said that there is the goal, happiness. Everybody desires happiness, a fulfilled life. But there ain't no path to reach them. There is no track to arrive to this happiness. And we are in the middle of nowhere, in the confusion, in the bewilderment, without knowing how to reach the most important thing that we desire. And this is the problem of life. Therefore, we use this strong word. We are terrified by this. Because we are, all of us, our entire life is a desire for happiness, and we can't get it. We can't reach it. All of us is pushing us from outside of our heart, from the inner part of our life, is pushing us to reach this, and we don't know how to get it. This is the problem of life. For this reason, we are in this wonderful expression that can describe very well what is our life. In a quick sand. We don't know how to find a foundation, a consistent foundation to live. And how can we understand this? How can we understand what is happening to us? During the summer, the Christmas time, I read a piece of Giussani's writing in which he describes very well what is our situation, what is the reason because we feel our life in these quicksands. Why? Why we are always in this unstable situation, in this floating situation? Because we look for consistency, he said, in what we can do, or in what we have. And this is the reason because we are so unstable, so insecure, so aware that is lacking a consistent foundation in which we can really rest, in which we can really consist in. If every one of us depends on what he can do, our consistency depends on it. And Giussani continues. This is the reason why we don't have the sentiment, the feeling of certainty that we desire. This full certainty that is implied in the word peace. Because the word peace indicates the certainty, the fullness. This full certainty, without which there is no peace, there is no joy, there is no fullness. It depends on the result. It depends on the outcome. It depends on how life can go. But this is not consistent. This doesn't give us a consistent foundation to be in peace, because it depends on the market. And the market is always fluctuating. And we accept it that our foundation is in this. So it's not a problem of lack of energy. It's not a problem of lack of effort. It's not a problem of lack of coherence. It's not a problem of all the causes, the reasons that we think that is the base from this situation. It's not that. Because it's the method that we are looking for something that even if we can reach it, is not enough to give us this consistency. It's not enough, because this foundation is unstable. By nature, it's unstable. So, if we don't change our mind, it's impossible, even if we put all our effort to reach them. It's impossible. Because this, what we have, what we do, are not able to give us the certainty, the peace, the joy that we are looking for. So, the mistake is not at the end. It's not the outcome of the journey. It's at the beginning. But nobody is so open as to put in question, to recognize this failure of the method. Who of us is open to recognize this? Who of us is open to put in question, to discuss that this method, that what we are looking for, we cannot reach doing this? Are you open to another possibility? And Yusan is continuous. The certainty is not something that we can reach with our effort, with what we can do it. The certainty is something that is happened to us. It's an event. An event which we have encountered. The certainty is something that happened in our life. The consistency of our person, the certainty of time coincides, literally coincides, insisted Giussani, literally coincides with something which is happened in our life. And quotes Emmanuel Mounier, a French author, who said, not something that is happening in our life, but somebody who is happened in our life. So the certainty is only in a relationship with somebody who is so strong that can give us this consistency that we are looking for, this peace, this joy, this fullness that we are looking for. And we need to decide. If you keep going on looking this certainty in what we can do, or we can have, obtain, or our certainty is in something, in somebody who is happened to us. And this is the question of Christian faith. For John and Andrew, as the gospel today's gospel have reminded us, the consistency of his life was in the relationship with him. For the shepherd, for Joseph and Mary, as we have seen in the Christmas time, the certainty is in this event. But for us, this event is, it seems, too inconsistent to believe it in. So the question is if we can do a journey in which we can verify if this relationship with somebody can offer us the possibility of founding a consistent foundation for our life. Otherwise, there is no answer to this, because the general way of thinking about certainty, about peace, is only the result of our effort or our capacity of getting this peace. And we have to recognize that all our effort, all our struggles are not enough to give us not even 1 minute of peace that an event can give us as a gift. We can surprise ourselves with this peace, with this joy, like the shepherd. when something like an encounter with King can happen in our life. The question is the journey we need to do to arrive to this.
And that's precisely the reason why I appreciate so much the younger generation, because they are sincere, because they, in a sense, have the courage to say what we no longer have courage to say, and it is that of my own effort, I cannot make it.
And it's true. It's perfectly true. At least we are so sincere to recognize it. It's true. The question is, in a moment, after a while, we come back to the general track. Because we need to keep going in life, to keep living. And everybody around us live in such a way, we, at the end, accepted the same way of living that we recognized in our experience that is a failure. And this is the question, that in a moment we are starting, instead of living on the truth, we decided to live on lie. On the lie.
The thing that continues to bother me or nag me as a question is that, however, we have seen this event you are talking about. Your inconsistency is coming from the outside, and I've seen it. But I continue to suffer of this inconsistency in between great events. So ultimately, even though Christ is entered into my life, and I have seen it,
but
what is it that is missing in this journey that is not giving me, even when Christ is being present in my life, I'm not consistent. I don't have this consistency, this peace.
Because many times we think that this event, that is a relationship with somebody who in a moment attracts me so much that for a moment I have to recognize my life full of peace, because I am so grasped, so attracted by him that I forget everything. And we think that if this event was true, it would have solved the problem forever. Like if there is something that is blocked, no? I find sound, I want something to write, I get the pen, I have it forever until somebody take it away from me. I have it, it's mine, I can possess, I have the solution. But life, our life is not possess something, to possess something, because it's absolutely boring. For the reason we need to change the pen, or the device, or the telephone, or the iPad, or whatever, because it's not enough. And we don't recognize that this is a relationship that can offer to us a possibility of fulfillment, because our heart is so desirous of a complete fulfillment that we are always looking for something else. And only in a relationship that we need to renew, we can experience this fullness. If the presence in our life of Christ doesn't solve in a moment, forever, all our inconsistencies, that means that Christ is not the solution. And we start to look for another one, and for another one, and for another one. It's not that Christ is not the solution, because when Christ enters in our life, he's so powerful. I am so powerfully attracted by him that I am everything. The question is that I need to come back, because I need to start again after a while, tomorrow morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, and I was in a alive relationship. Because otherwise, life, it would be absolutely boring. What makes different is that life is alive. I want to see again the beloved person who I love him. I want to see again and again and again. And why I want to say, yes, I love you. And I decided that this possibility can again and again to be fulfilled by my yes, I love you. Without this, life is a burden. It's impossible to bear. But for us, the solution is always to solve the problem. That means that Christ is the solution if he is able of solving the problems once forever. Not that he's introduced in a relationship in which I can experience again and again, in every moment, in every instant, the fullness of his love, the fullness of this relationship as your son, the children who always come back to the mother and to the father, because it's in this relationship that life is fulfilled, that life is secure, where certainty reappears constantly. It's not something that is made one forever. He needs a presence in which, in front of every circumstance, of every challenge, of every fear, of every hunger, of every, he can come back to this relationship. It not solved the question one and forever. It's resolved one and forever because the presence continues to be present, but it's in a dialogue with this presence that I need to accept, and I need to look for, and I need to come back, and I need to open my eye, to my hand, to embrace this present. And in this relationship, in this dialogue, that this is the dialogue that is in the center of the mystery, because life is this dialogue in the center of the being between the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. It's a dialogue. It's a relationship. Be fulfilled is only this kind of relationship, is not only like a sickness that I can solve one and forever, because it's not a sickness. Our life is this openness that we need to be fulfilled. Is this relationship that makes life completely different. It's not something that I need to overcome once and forever. It's a relationship. It's a fullness of love in which we can be full, we can see our life really fulfilled. But many times, if the encounter doesn't solve one and forever what we identify like a sickness, that is our desire, we think that Christ is not the answer, and we start to look for another one, and for another one, like the prodigal son. We can receive it. We can find this. We can have received something like him, but we don't recognize that the relationship with the Father is the answer of his need. And for this, he is uneasy at home. And he began to look for something outside of the relationship because it was not enough for him. And this is the life. From the beginning of humanity, God created man in this closeness to him, in this familiarity to him, in the paradise, but it was not enough. And human being decided to look for this happiness according to his own criterion. The mankind is from then, since then, looking for something that can fulfill life. It's the journey that the disciples did with Jesus, because they couldn't recognize that Jesus is different. We have never seen something like him, said the gospel. What could have been the impression, the commotion that his presence provoked in the disciples, in Israel people. But even though after seeing this exceptionality, many times they are in this uncertainty, the same, because they need to do a journey to become more and more certain that Christ is really what he is. I am always struck by the journey of the disciples, because they saw some kind of miracles that are beyond any kind of imagination. The multiplication of bread. Nobody could have done something like that. Twice, they saw this kind of miracle twice. But we remember in the spiritual exercises of fraternity, after a while, they came with Jesus on the boat and realized that they have forgotten the bread. And they became insecure again. They didn't realize. They didn't realize who had done the miracle, who had made the miracle of the multiplication of the bread. And the gospel is amazing, because Jesus asked them, "Do you not yet understand or comprehend? Are your heart hardened? Do you have eyes and not see, ears and not hear? Do you not remember when I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000? How many wicker baskets full of fragments you picked up? 12. When I broke 7 loaves for the 4,000, how many full baskets of fragments did you pick up? 7. He said to them, do you still not understand? It's not a problem of coherence, it's not a problem of ethics, it's not a problem of effort. Jesus was not asking them an effort, or he was blaming them because they were not coherent, ethically coherent, because he blamed them because they are no simple heart of recognizing what they have seen. Do you still not understand? But it's amazing because the gospel keeps insisting in this. After this, in the Gospel of Matthew, after a day in which Jesus devoted all the day to preach, Jesus sent the disciple ahead, and he went to pray. When the boat was in the midst of the sea, and he alone on the land, he seeing them distress in rowing, for the wind was contrary unto them. About the 4th watch of the night, he cometh unto them, walking on the sea, and he would have passed by them, when they saw him walking on the sea, supposed that it was a ghost, and cried out. For us, after seeing all the things that they have seen, after seeing the miracle, for us Jesus is like a ghost, something that is not able to give us consistency. It's something that appears to us inconsistent. For they all saw him and were troubled. And he straightway spake with them and said unto them, not to be afraid. And he went up unto them into the boat, and the wind ceased. And they were so amazed in themselves. And look at the conclusion of the scene. For they understood not concerning the loaves, but their heart was hardened. Our problem is this lack of poverty of heart, of openness, of simplicity of heart to adhere to what we have seen. Because we need not to be different, not to be coherent, not to be strong enough to be consistent in ourselves. It's not possible for us. We are so fragile, so inconsistent, that it's impossible that we can offer to us the consistency we are looking for. It's impossible. Like a little child doesn't need to be consistent, to have enormous energy. His peace is in the relationship with his Father. But for us, this is something that is difficult to accept. It's not a problem of coherence or effort. It's a problem that we make an enormous difficult to understand that life is this relationship. And for this reason, we are not in peace. We are not in joy, because our consistency is in what we can do. And after a while, we are tremble. We are in trouble. We are full of fear in front of the risk of the life, because it's not possible that this can offer to us something that can be a real consistent. They didn't understand concerning the loaves. Why? Because their heart was hardened. The gospel is simple in the identification of the question. We refuse to adhere because our heart is hardened. Not because we are fragile. There is nothing. The fragility is nothing. It's our resistance. It's our skepticism, our resistance to recognize what we have seen, not that we need to adhere to something that we didn't see. But the difficulty of adhere to something, to somebody who we have seen with all his consistency, with all his power, with all his capacity of offering me peace and joy and fulfillment. So we are resistant people. We are hardened heart people. But this is our resistance to conversion. Resistance to conversion, resistance to, but not to conversion like an ethical problem. To be a little more brave. No, it's the resistance to recognize who is the consistency of the life. Who can offer us, who can give us this consistency that is the foundation of peace and joy and fullness. Only if we accept to do the journey of the disciple, is a consolation for everybody else, because we are not different than the disciple. Jesus knows very well what is our life, what is our resistance. He didn't scandalize of the resistance of the disciple. Only keep asking them, don't you understand that the life consists in the relationship with me, in accepting me as your foundation, as your possibility of peace. And only in the relationship with me, your life can be fulfilled. Do you realize? And again, and again, and again, he begin one after another to offer them the possibility of this peace, this happiness. And this is the journey that disciples accepted at the end to do, and this is the possibility that we can do with them.
So if the journey is a relationship and the problem is a problem of understanding, it's a problem of knowledge, you're basically saying. And
this is very important. It's a problem of knowledge. It's not a problem of ethics. We have reduced Christianity to a problem of ethics. And our consistency depends on ethics, on our coherence. If we can do according to a set of rules, we are in peace. If we are not, we are in trouble. No. Our consistency doesn't depend on our capacity of coherence. Our consistency depends on our capacity of recognizing a relationship with Christ. The disciples can be in trouble, but if they accepted the presence of Christ, immediately the wind disappeared. The difficulty, the fear is overcome. It's amazing, because it's like your children with you. In the moment that your children is crying out, and appeared the father of the man, he is in peace. It's not a question of being, or have more energy in this precise moment, the child is calm. Because it's only in the relationship with Christ, with the Father, and in the relationship with Christ, that we can reach this peace that no other possession of our hands can offer us, can give us. And we need to decide of looking constantly this success on which we can base off our life, or we can look for this consistency in a relationship. There are two different ways of living. But not that one is more difficult than the other. No, it's an election. It's a choice. We need to choose between two ways of living that we can produce the foundation of our life with our energy, with our success, with our career, or we can accept the peace because we accept to enter in a relationship with somebody. This is the real question. It's a problem of a choice, a problem of knowledge. If we can recognize what is the problem of our life, and there is a solution or a working hypothesis that even if I can verify, can solve the problem. And there is another who offers us a possibility of being in peace always.
So I want to focus on then, if what is separating me or what is stopping me in this relationship with Christ is that the heart is hardened. Which it reminds me of what Don Ju says in Why the Church, when he says that we have a repugnance towards the idea of living, I would say, with the heart in our sleeves. But the question that I have is how do we soften this heart? So like how does this happen? Because it seems to me that what you are saying today, this is the key to the journey. It's not enough to have seen Christ. It's not enough to see Him often, unless the heart is not hardened.
I come back again to the prodigal son parable because it's a simple one that everybody can understand. The prodigal son was born in a house with the father, with the house, with the goods, everything was at hand for him. But even if he had received all these good things, even though he feels like a repugnance. Why? Because he didn't understand what is his real need. For this reason, he went away from the house, looking for something that could give him what the house and the father couldn't give to him. And what is the result of this journey that the prodigal son did? That in a moment of all this journey, according to the gospel, said that the prodigal son entered into himself, started to be aware, really aware of his real need, of the nature of his own need, who he really was. Only in that moment, only when he recognized what is the nature of his need, only in that moment, he discovered in himself the desire to come back home. Repugnance is overcome. The victory of this repugnance is not a consequence of a fight or a sacrifice, of a mortification. I decide to sacrifice my life to God, and I return home. It was not the case. He overcame this repugnance when he recognized the nature of his need. That his needs, it was so big that only in the relationship with the Father, to come back to house, can be overcome. It's, again, a problem of knowledge. It's not a problem of ethics. It's not because I am so badly, I decided to go. No, it's a problem that he recognized, according to the gospel is amazing. He came to himself. He entered into himself. He started to be aware, finally, who he really was. And in that moment, in that precise moment, he decided, how many hired servants of my father's have bread enough, and I perish with hunger. That the hunger he has can't be solved with his own images of solving this hunger, but only in this relationship. There is no repugnance again. Repugnance is disappeared. It's amazing. Because the prodigal son didn't say, my father could be a little worried. I have provoked him a lot of trouble. I want to come back because poor is suffering. It's not a problem of some kind of desire to be more mortified person. It not is only when he entered into himself, recognize what is the nature of his needs, and immediately he began to decide to come back home. The repugnance is finished. There is no repugnance. All the time, all the question in our life is how much time we need to be aware of our needs. Not how can I fight with my repugnance. It's not a problem of I struggle with my repugnance, because it's useless. Because I can do it trying to fight against my repugnance. But at the end, I am not convinced if I have this repugnance, I always feel myself uneasy, because if I could do in another way, I would do it. It's not this one. It's in a moment when he recognized what is the nature of his need, the repugnance doesn't exist. No mention of him, of it. No mention. It's amazing. For this problem of life, it's a problem of coherence, of faith. It's a problem of knowledge. How much time we need to understand what is life about? What is the nature of myself? And what is the answer to this heart with all the desire that my heart has inside? This is the question. For this is so important education, because I remember always a question that a teenager of high school asked me some months ago. The only possibility of learning what life is about is making mistakes, like the prodigal son. No, there is another possibility. Accepting to be educated. Yusanis offers us a possibility of being educated, because from the beginning of the journey, he tries to convince us to recognize what is the nature of our heart, what is the nature of our needs, what is the nature of our desire, what is the nature of our lack of fullness, what is the nature of all my humanity. I don't need to wait to do mistake to understand what is the nature, because in all my life, I can see what is the nature of my eye, what is the nature of the heart, what is the nature of my desire. If we started to accept this, and we can be educated to this, we can prevent this kind of mistake, this kind of failure, this kind of wasting our life looking for something that even when we can realize, we can do it, the images that we have in our hand, like prodigal son, even though it's useless for life. So, the question is if we accept it, if we accept to be educated, to participate in a journey in which each one of us can be helped in this education. Because without this, it's impossible. Many times, for us, the religious science or our humanity is reduced to a mess of feelings, to a humble of emotion, of sentiments. But this is only a mess of something so inconsistent, so chambered, that it's impossible that can offer a tools for our life. Only if we recognize again and again what is the nature of our heart, of our desire, only in that way we can overcome this repugnance that Giussani said at the beginning of why the church?
I mean, an educated heart. So like if it is not a matter of like behavior, we are putting the emphasis in saying that the key here is to know myself, let me put it this way, and that the possibility for me to know Christ is within me, is in my heart, and that this heart is infallible, and that I can get to Him through my experience. But everything sounds very subjective. I mean, what it makes what I do kind of like a more objective knowledge is that I can measure it, I can see it. So like is really the heart and is really experience an objective way of knowing? Because, I mean, if I'm betting all of my happiness into this, how am I not at risk of following a subjective path and therefore getting lost on myself?
This is part of education, because the question is how we can understand this I, this heart, no? Because for most of the people, heart is only this mess of feelings, this jumble of sentiments, no? This is, I can recognize, is very difficult to manage, no? Very difficult to understand that this so changeable can offer a real tools, no? Infallible tools, no? And we need to learn, no? Giussani said that it's infallible as a criterion, not in the way I can use it. I can learn a mathematics formula that is perfectly right, and I can apply the formula in a wrong way. I can make mistake using this formula, and the formula is perfectly true, but it's not enough. I need a training to use it in the correct way, and this is part of the journey, part of the education process, no? First of all, but if we can see, the question at the end is, but it's only a problem of education in the use of objective tools? Is a true formula, the heart, or is only a subjective instrument? And we need to look at our experience, to discover in our experience if this heart is really objective. No? If the criterion of judgment is really objective. I started with some examples. First of all, if somebody is sick with a sickness that is not easy to identify, can we have a criterion, an objective criterion to evaluate if the doctor has identified the solution of my sickness?
Yes.
That is?
I feel better.
I feel better. There is an objective criterion, healing. If the doctor heals my sickness, is the proof, the evidence that the criterion is objective. I have in myself, inside myself, the criterion of judging, because I know I can be stupid, but I can understand when I feel well and when I feel badly. So the criterion is objective. And if the doctor tries to convince me that I am not the criterion inside of me, because he is the Nobel Prize of the medicine, after a while, I am fed up and look for another doctor, because my illness remains. Why I am so sure that is not the way? Because the sickness remains. This is an objective criterion. If I don't have the answer to these needs, I can be certain that this, I don't know if could have another solution. But this is not, because I remain sick. Everybody can recognize this, or we need to make a journey or to do a master in Harvard to understand that my sickness remains. It's objective or it's not objective. Anybody can decide if we have the criterion of ourselves, the criterion inside of us. And it's the same that the example that I put years ago with my student in the battle with them regarding these issues, because with a high school student, you can play with them. It's not a game. It's a problem of truth, and they don't accept something is not evident for them. No? In a moment, it crossed to my mind the question, the example of the shoes that I did many times afterwards. No? If somebody goes to buy the shoes, you can see, we can have an objective criterion to understand what is your appropriate shoes.
Shoes, yeah.
Shoes. The only way that the assistant cannot leg my leg is that I have a criterion inside of me, because otherwise the assistant can try to sell me whatever shoes. But the assistant can decide. Not even myself, because I prefer this one because there is on sale. And I can save a lot of money. But unfortunately, I can't decide what is the number of my shoes. Is it objective or not? The criterion is inside of us. We can be happy or not. We can protest or not. But this is so. And the same happens with the heart. The prodigal son can decide that the image that he has in mind to get happiness is his true image. Congratulations. But this image that you have has to be verified in experience, in the relationship with your needs, in the relationship with your heart. He verified his hypothesis, his images, and he ended up with the pigs. And he recognized that his working hypothesis wasn't correct, wasn't right. Is objective or not? We can say in a pluralistic society whatever we want. But there is something that we can prevail, that we can avoid. That there is something that corresponds to our heart, to our desire of happiness, to our fullness, to our desire of fullness, and there is something that doesn't correspond. We can decide. Is objective or not? The question, therefore, is if we can be open to accept this, use this criterion as a part of this journey, like the prodigal son. The prodigal son at the end found that the heart, it was so objective that even in the middle of the pigs, he has the evidence that the heart was so clear that he decided to come home. Why? Because of a preach? Because of somebody who convinced him? There is nobody around. He recognized the objectivity of the heart, the objectivity of the need, and he recognized that it was better to be at home than to be with the pigs. There is no confusion at the end. And the gospel said, how many hired servants of my father's have bread enough, and I perish with hunger? Is objective or not? Everybody can decide. I don't want to convince anybody about the evidence. It's a problem of simplicity of heart. It's not a problem of conviction, of a big statement or a complicated reasoning. It's only a problem of simplicity. This simplicity to which Jesus called all of us. The only possibility of recognizing the kingdom of God is the simplicity of heart. You can participate of the fullness that I have brought to the world because you are simple of heart. This is the blessing. You are blessed because you are hungry of this happiness, of this fulfillment, because you are poor of spirit. This is what we need, because in such a way we can say yes, yes, no, no, without confusion. But we prefer to say maybe, because if I say maybe, I don't have to commit myself with the truth that I recognize, with the reality I have recognized. And if I keep saying maybe, I can doing whatever I want.
It's striking to me. I mean, I'm making this connection here that this hardened of heart is coming out of the fact that I'm not using it. It's lack of use. It gets hard. It gets out of shape because I'm not using it. And you are saying, look, the solution to this problem is that you begin to use it. Mm-hmm. So, like, it reminds me of. If you want to really ride the bicycle, learn to ride the bicycle, you have to get into the bicycle. Mm-hmm. That is not about repeating to you who Jesus is. Mm-hmm. It's not about repeating some doctrine. It's not about repeating what happened, but it's about using a word that is dear to us, verifying something true in me. Mm-hmm. Which ultimately, immediately it introduces a couple of different questions. One is that if the only possibility for me to grow in relationship with Christ is to use my heart, and the only way in which I'm going to see this growth in me is by using it, God is putting a lot of confidence on my freedom. Because if the only possibility for me to arrive to the truth is through an experience, if the only possibility for me to go to the truth is by using this heart, he's putting a lot of confidence in my capacity to get there. And I want to maybe very simply kind of like summarize it by saying, and maybe closing with this question. So, like, what is ultimately then the relationship between truth and freedom?
It's amazing because what is the confidence of God in the heart? In order that to create a human being through in the reality, only with this tool in hand, to compare everything in life with this set of thirst of happiness, with it hunger of the heart. Because for us, it seems so small that is not enough. But this is the only way that Jesus and God can be so confident on freedom. Mm-hmm. Because otherwise, if we don't have an instrument, a criterion of judgment, we are in the confusion, in the total confusion. And everything depends on my feeling or my fancy. But you have an objective criterion. And the freedom is related to this, because if the prodigal son have seen in a moment what is the nature of his heart, what is the nature of his need, God can accept to offer him the freedom, because he can recognize in a moment what is the nature of his need to come back home. Otherwise, the only possibility is to remain at home without freedom. That is many times what we are imagining like the best world in the world. Because at the end, I repeat, because I am convinced of it, what scandalizes us is freedom. We can understand that God can have created a human being and run the risk of his freedom. And I can imagine the trepidation of God in front of the wrong use of freedom, like a father with his son. Because I can imagine many of us in front of the wrong use of freedom of the son. And I can imagine the temptation that we have if to take away freedom to solve the question. Because it's the only way that prevents that my son can do stupidity, no? Can do something that is wrong. And this is the temptation that could have at the same time God, no? To take away freedom. That is what we are, if we have the possibility of doing, if we was God, we were God, many times, we didn't resist, wouldn't resist the temptation of taking away the freedom of the soul. But this has a consequence, that the relationship with truth is without freedom. That means that the relationship with the truth cannot be mine. The prodigal son came back home, changed. It's not the same son that went away. Mm-hmm. It's a different one. Now he is happy to be son. Before, he was son, but he was unhappy and went away because he thought that it was another way of living better than this one. Now, he came back and he is happy to be so. And he recognized the father as a good thing for him, something good for him. You can imagine that God preferred to have sons that are happy to be sons. Not sons that live at home like a servant, like a slave, who father cannot decide this. To have son like a son, not as a servant. Without this possibility of freedom in the relationship with the Father, with the truth, it's not possible not to be a slave, not to be servant at home. And God preferred risk, run the risk with our freedom to have some that could have the joy of being really so. Who fathers don't decide that, doesn't decide that? This is the question. Otherwise, we can do a world in which everything was perfect, there is no mistake, there is no risk of doing the wrong thing, but with a problem, that there is no freedom. This is the best, this is the paradise for us. I don't want this paradise. I prefer to risk. I prefer, even when I can do a mistake, to beg for pardon, to be like the prodigal son. I went to my father, and I want to ask him to treat it as a servant. And I can discover that he doesn't answer to my demand, but instead of treating me like a servant, he received me like a son.
Father Carron, I call you that you were a father to us because truly you educate us to be loyal with the heart. And I think that this is having you among us, having someone who dares to live this way, so because it's the possibility of being essential with what truly is important to us. And at the same, someone that loves our freedom, because no one can substitute this work. You cannot substitute my personal work as...
I don't want to.
So thank you very much, Father Carron.
Thank you.